So I may ruffle some feathers with this assertion, but here it is. Man was not meant to do serious editing with a mouse or trackball or pen for that matter. The way to optimize speed and, more importantly, maintain a great sense of pacing and rhythm and flow while you're editing in FCP or Avid is to use the keyboard. I know this may be heretical among some FCP editors, but even FCP works better if you use the keyboard. That said, the keyboard settings in Avid are important. If you're an FCP editor who likes to use the keyboard, then I created a keyboard setting that matches as many of the FCP functions as possible. I'm a musician and I know that years of experience creates muscle memory in your fingers. In addition to trying to match Avid's keyboard settings to Final Cut's, there are a ton of ways to customize your keyboard and your entire user interface. And as many have said before me, Final Cut and Avid are two different beasts, so it's better to try to use each system as it was meant to be used instead of trying to force it to work like the other. The main reason why that's true is because on either system, you miss a lot of powerful features by trying to make it work like the other system. The strength of each system is the unique way it works. So settings are very important, especially the keyboard setting, because Avid is really, as I mentioned before, is really one of those systems that plays well when you're using the keyboard as a driver for your editing. So one of the main ways that you can leverage how fast you can edit is by customizing your keyboard to the way you specifically edit. By clicking on the keyboard setting, you launch this little window which shows you your keyboard. It's very similar to the Final Cut Pro version of this, where you see icons on the keyboard themselves. Now, in order to be able to customize this interface, what you have to do is hit Command 3, which calls up your command palette. The command palette is a tabbed list of all the different icons, all the different buttons that you can either map to your interface. You can see some of those buttons here. You can see some of the buttons on the keyboard. You can map all of these things to either the user interface itself or to the keyboard. And I'm going to show you how to do that because this is, like I said, it's so important to understand the keyboard settings. The basic keyboard settings for Avid are very similar to Final Cut. Basically, you see the JKL here for playing and pausing and rewinding, and also the in and out marks are here at I and O, the same place that they are on Final Cut Pro, and the space bar also acts as a toggle between play and stop. If you want to change any of these things, it's pretty simple to do. You come down to in your command palette, choose button to button reassignment, and now any of the buttons that you want anywhere on your user interface or anywhere on your keyboard can simply be dragged and moved around. For example, if I wanted fast forward and rewind onto my F7 and F8, I can take them right off the user interface. Or if I wanted, let's say, the move tool, if I want to move fields, which is a great thing that Avid can do that I love, instead of stepping forward in frames, if you're working with interlaced footage and you're trying to be able to see specific fields, you can actually map the fields so that it steps through one field at a time. I like to have those onto the shift of my left and right arrows. So I hold that down and I just drag that right to there and drop it, and drag this one right to here and drop it. And now the regular interface is stepping one frame at a time when I hit the arrow keys. And if I hold down Shift and hit the arrow keys, I'm stepping one field at a time. And you'll see up in the top corner here that it's showing there's field 1, field 2, field 1, field 2. So that's how you're able to simply map stuff. You just go through this tabbed list and see something you think you might want. For example, I want to be able to clear my mark in and clear my mark out. Well, it might be really useful to have clear mark in and clear mark out directly under your I and O buttons on the Shift key. So if you hold down Shift and drag clear mark in to I and clear mark out to O, now if you hit I, it marks it in, and O marks it out, and Shift I clears your in and Shift O clears your out. So you can use the interface the way it's set up, or you can customize it specifically to the way you want to do it. Another great thing about Avid is that you can actually map menu assignments. In other words, things that you'd pull down from a menu. You can map these things directly to your keyboard, even if there's not a button for them. The way that you do that is you click on this menu to button reassignment button right here. And when it's active, your cursor changes to this funny little thing that kind of looks like a menu pull down. And what you do is you click on the button where you want your menu assignment to go, let's say F5, click there, and then you see that that's active. Now when I go up to clip, I can pull down to render in to out. And now at F5, you'll see RI. From now on, whenever I click F5 on my Media Composer, it will actually render any effects between my in and my out. There are other things I like to have mapped. For example, the audio mixer doesn't have a specific button that you're able to turn on. Audio Tool does, but you can still map it. So for example, I like to have my audio mixer and audio tool set to F11 and F12. So I'm just going to click F11, go up to Tools, choose Audio Mixer, and you can see the little audio mixer icon shows up there on the key. Click F12 and choose Audio Tool, and I've got AT. So now if I hit my F12 button, it'll call up my audio tool. Same thing, if I hit F11, it will now call up my audio mixer. One of the disadvantages of Avid is that unlike Final Cut Pro, which allows you to map your keyboard so that the regular keys are mapped, the shift keys are mapped, and all of your modifier keys are mapped, so you can have things under, for example, Option or Command or Control keys. Avid can't do that. It can only map things to the shift key and to the regular key. Now, that's not that much of a problem because Avid allows you to map things all over your keyboard. For example, if I call up Command 3 to get my command palette and I want to map something to just above my timeline, I can say, oh, locators would be a great thing to have above there. So I can click on More and choose, oh, I want a red locator. I have to go back to button reassignment. And I just drag that down here. And now if I want to add a locator, it's right here on my timeline to be able to add a locator. If I want a couple of different colors, I just drag them right next to those. So now I've got a green and a blue locator. If I want that to be a red and a blue locator, boom, there you go. The other thing that you can do is it's actually possible to take your keyboard interface, there it is right there, and right click and choose duplicate. And now I have two different keyboard settings. You could have one be an editing keyboard, and the other one, for example, if you want to do color correction, you could just put all your color correction keyboard settings on this color correction tab and then switch between them. And your keyboard would actually work differently depending on which one of these two settings you had. My final bit of sage advice about keyboard mapping is that whatever you find yourself doing with your mouse or with a menu several times a day, map it. Keep track of those things and map them to speed up your editing in the future. It takes a little bit of discipline and some practice, but it will really help you become a better editor.